Hello and welcome to the New School HR podcast. This is episode 10, the final episode of season 2. So this one is a very dear topic for me. The title being talent. Now, I've had to rein myself in for this one because talent is something I really enjoy doing. So this is a very, very cut down version and I hope that I don't go too far with it. But yeah, enjoy. So, what does talent mean? So, I think we have all various different versions of what it means within the organizations we work in. But for that reason, I went on Google. I'm not going to lie, considering that is something I really enjoy doing, because I wanted to see what the sort of definitions were in relation to the workplace. So, the one that I found that kind of was the cleanest, if you like, is talent is employees who are capable through either output or behavior. And I just felt like that really sort of sums it up, really, doesn't it? Because when you're looking at people, you're looking at what they do and how they do it. So the cleanest version that I could find. For me, to expand on that, is those who are able to understand the department that they're within. So whether that's understanding the mechanics of it, it doesn't necessarily mean the technical aspect of everything within the department, but they understand the mechanics and the cogs, as it were. They understand the role that they do and the roles around them. And I think that is also quite key. If you think about those who get on really well in terms of their interactions and how they draw people in, you think of the managers that are very good with people. It's usually because they understand their role. Following that, they understand the role of those around them. So I know I said the department. The department was around mechanics and stuff. But understanding the different roles within the department, understanding where their role ends, sometimes is a talent in itself, and that enables those who have the right behavior to actually think about how they expand. Understand the company. So not just their actual individual part of the department, but the actual business that they're in. Understanding what the purpose of the business is. So, yes, we have missions and statements and goals as businesses, correct. But actually understanding the actual culture of the company, understanding what those written materials actually mean, and actually attempting to almost be present in those. Understanding the company performance. For me, that's a very key one. What usually stood out for me in my early days when I sort of started working with managers alongside them was those who actually understood the bigger picture. So those who were able to, think about the fact that it wasn't just their department that had to perform, and understanding their individual contribution to the overall performance. So everyone has a contribution. It's not always written. And sometimes you will find people who are able to, there's a hair clip in my hand. I don't know why this is here. This is what happens, isn't it? I always get distracted. But also understanding the objectives of the business. So not just in terms of the long-term vision. I mean, what is the objectives that they have been set? So whether that's at department level, branch level, location level, whatever. Understanding what it is. And then the last bit is to understand the customer. Now, when I say customer, I don't mean the person who's buying a service from you. I always think about internal and external customers. So how do you interact with them? Do you treat them the same? What is the impact of not providing the service, both internal and external customer-wise? So these are the things I sort of look at. That's the kind of first glances. Looking at the natural aptitude or the skills that they have. How quickly does someone pick something up? How natural is it for someone who sees something to find a solution? You know, what's the lateral thinking? I remember one example it's one of my own. When I was in college, I did an art type subject. I won't elaborate on what. It was an art and design. And we had to do, one of our modules was some nonsense. I can't even remember what it was called. Yeah, it's complete nonsense for me anyway, for me. And we had to watch this video that was supposed to be, artistic. It wasn't actually to do with anything to do with our actual subject. It was just a module that was used to take us outside of our comfort zone and gain points, or whatever it was back in those days, to get your overall accreditation. Anyway, this thing was madness, bro. Like, bare madness. There was animals and there was like kids running. I don't even know what was happening. I don't know. But anyway, in my notes, I wrote down that what I interpreted on the screen, which was an aggressive version of Baloo the bear from the Jungle Book, chasing Mowgli. And my tutor saw that, and I thought he was gonna like flip his lid, and he was like, "Wow, that is a very simplistic way of saying exactly what is on the screen." I was like, "Oh," and he said that I had an actual ability to be able to translate difficult images into something that even a 5-year-old would understand. I'll take that one. And that's always stuck with me. I know, well, mainly because it was something I did. That's probably why. But the fact that somebody, my tutor in that instance, was able to think so differently and actually find a positive to what looked like me literally just chilling and being stupid in the back of the class. So I've always carried that with me, and I've always tried to understand how people get to where they're getting, or how they understand the message, or how they're interpreting what's going on around them. So, mic check. The mic's a bit funny. Okay, so in terms of identifying talent, so we spoke about behavior and output. So the kind of things I look at is the observations on the job. So now, this is controversial for HR, isn't it? Not a lot of us like to be present. That's what I find. But I think you have to be. And I mean, I was in a regional role where I had accountability at times for like, I don't know, upwards of 70 locations across the Midlands down to the southeast, stretching into Wales, yeah? So it's not easy, but you do have opportunities, things like manager meetings, your visits and stuff like that. You'll also have a sense of it through performance that you see, but also the interaction. So for example, as a HR person, if you send out a communication, who responds, that kind of thing. And obviously you got their line managers who will also provide feedback. I mean, one of the things I thought was quite astounding was how much detail my regional managers knew about their people. You know, considering that, okay, their frequency was probably higher than mine in terms of their interactions, because obviously they had those day-to-day interactions, but you get a sense. And I think within HR, you build a sense of it. Like, you can build a picture very quickly of how people react just from the interactions with you. But, you know, it is about taking that feedback of those who see them in action, see them in the job. But when you're getting these things, it's about how you challenge what those observations are, and making sure that people understand what the job descriptions that they are signed up to is. The other thing is, if you see someone doing well, highlight this. Like, I don't know why people are so reluctant to do it. Whether that's to the line manager, whether that's to the individual themselves, however you want to do it, highlight something, celebrate something if it's good. We spoke about manager meetings, but I always look at the group settings. So how do they interact with those around them? Are they taking over the show? Are they someone that the group sort of lean on? And not only look at that, but also their participation in training. So how long does it take them to pick something up? How long does it take them to implement and role model what they learned? That was quite a key one in the first company I worked at. It was always when you did training, you had to set an objective of how you're going to actually implement that within the workplace. And so we were always measured on that. Do they challenge the trainer? So I used to be a trainer. And to be fair, I'm not a trainer now, but I do training. And to this day, I am more than happy to be challenged on things. And I think as a HR person, that's what you need to create. Like, I don't understand these HR people that believe we know everything operationally, or we have all the answers. If we've done management, how long have we done management for, maximum? And how long have they been around that environment that they're within? So you have to respect it. I did a training session recently, and somebody who had absolutely zero people management experience, we were talking about absences and, or was it performance management? I can't remember what he was doing anyway. He was talking about something, and it was that's what it was. So we were doing, is it misconduct, conduct, whatever. And the answer actually says it was misconduct. But they actually broke it down a completely different way. And when she formulated her answer, I had no response. So she was like, actually, it could be capability because of da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, wow, fair play. You actually was able to change my mind. And I openly said that, I was like, actually, I've never thought of it that way. I think that's what we need to think about. We want people to have the encouragement to put their own ideas out there and manage upwards. And if people are doing that, there's absolutely no way you want to put a stop to that. The one other thing I really sort of look at is peer-to-peer challenge. So how are they challenging their peers? Obviously the tone and the temperament behind it. But across all levels, this is something I speak about quite often to, our entry level roles. It is about peer-to-peer challenge. Everyone looks at the manager as the person that's supposed to deliver and do everything. But where's the peer-to-peer piece? So it's empowering people and seeing how they do that. If you create an environment where people are responsive to being asked a question, then you don't really have a problem. Which takes us to problem solving. How are they able to think in terms of finding a resolution? Does somebody look for literature, what's in black and white? Do they go and find someone else? Or are they willing to have a go? I'm very much in a place of, letting people loose on something. How many times, I remember the last company I worked for, we had quite a difficult system to use in terms of the branch network. And it was known that it was a difficult system in the industry. It was like we just kept on evolving with this difficult system. And in one of the locations, we hired a young girl who came from a shoe shop, had no experience of the industry, no experience of using the systems, the technology that we had. And letting her loose on the system, she actually became a super user because she just in terms of her actual usage of a computer and understanding of one for domestic use, was able to find all kinds of different ways of using the system. I mean, one of the things was how laborious the processes were. She was able to cut processes down by like 25-30% in terms of improving that customer experience for the end user. So, there are benefits to letting someone have a go. Obviously, I guess if she totally destroyed the system, that wouldn't have been good. Somebody's desire to learn. Now, I think we get fed a lot of I want to develop, especially as HR in these performance reviews and stuff like that. I want to develop, I want to be better. So, okay, prove it. And, for me, it's not just about people doing overtime to learn and whatever. It's about how do they add to what they are already. So do they do anything outside of work? Do they incorporate learnings from other things? One of the things I remember when I was at the retail company was the HR person there. So when I was not in HR, they got to know us a bit, and they understood sort of what makes us tick. And I used to play football, and I used to be quite an actual leader in that environment. And they used to tell me, what would you do if this scenario happened? You'd obviously do this, you'd do that. What would you think? Da-da-da. There's a really good method of getting people to unlock their potential, even things like video games or whatever. There's problem solving and learnings in every aspect of life. The other thing I look at the previous companies they work for. So there are some companies that are just really good to have on your CV. So as an example, the retailer I worked for some reason, everyone sees that and thinks, that's amazing. I'm not quite, I don't know, I guess, they're known for their training. They're known for development programs and stuff like that. So I get it. And one of the other companies, you probably don't hear them so much now because it's probably a good, 2001? We're probably talking a good sort of 13, 12 years ago. But Woolworths, I remember when they were going through their closures and stuff, and their staff were highly sought after. Like, as far as I know, Woolworths staff just got snapped up by places like Argos and other companies that had, those kind of products, because you had staff that had a high level of training. The other piece is, how do they take feedback? Now, if someone doesn't take feedback perceivably well, that's not a negative thing. At the same time, I'm not too keen on this whole passion as an excuse thing. But it is worth noting how they react and understanding how you have to approach people. So, I've worked with people where you literally have to be like, look, you're being a fucking prick. And you can get that message through. There's other people where you have to be more tact in your approach, and you have to sit them down and ask them to think about it and explain, etc. So people react differently. I'm very much in the space of, if you don't like something I do, can you just tell me? I don't like all this kind of like fucking around. Just get to the point. But then it's also about when they get that feedback, what do they do? Do they question things? Do they ask for examples? Or do they just kind of say, yeah, okay, and crack on? Because I don't like, maybe that's me personally, if I'm told something, I want to know what, and I'd want that analysis, because obviously you're telling me I've not done something right for a reason, so let's talk it through. So, talent management process. Now, this can be a complete minefield, right? So I'm going to go through some basic stuff. And I'm not going to touch too much into it. I'm happy to explore that further if anyone wants me to on a one-to-one basis. But I just think this is it's a big piece. I don't think it's a 5-minute segment on the podcast. So first thing is to actually understand what the company's talent process is. And you might think to yourself, I know what it is. No, actually understand what it is. And understand the mechanics behind it. Understand who is the decision makers. Who are the people's opinions that count. I don't think that's the right way to be, but that is the reality of it. There are people whose opinion and value their opinion adds more value to the conversation. So it's natural if you can get that person to spend some time or whatever, then you're going to get a good picture of it. I think every company has it. You got people that you want your talent to be around to give the example of themselves and stuff like that. Is there a 9-box grid? So a 9-box grid is an assessment tool, in essence, to map out. I mean, there's different criteria, but the most common one is performance and potential. So you'd have one of 3 ratings for performance, which would be below, medium, high. And then in terms of potential, you'll have develop, prepare, ready. And these are the most common ones I've seen. So you're looking at, the performance one is self-explanatory, but in terms of the development piece, develop means that there's some sort of requirement there, whether that's for a positive or negative reason. And I think people get quite caught up on that development title under potential, thinking that it means that, they're no good. No, it might be that they're new to a role. It might be that they have moved to a different department and they've got to, understand it better. So it might be the same role, but it's a different department. And there's different variations of it. For me, the one that I think gets used and abused is prepare. So for me, in that instance with prepare, I'm looking at somebody within the next sort of year to 18 months that could be the next role. And I think one of the things I think we were quite good at in the previous workplace was, we had the 9-box in rotation for about 2 years that I was there. And we used it as a tool that people believed in. And I think the piece is that with that prepare heading, think about it, because you could move someone who is ready to go into the next role. But the next role doesn't mean it's a roll up. It could be a sideway role. It could be the exact same job title, but in a bigger environment. And so I got to a place where I was advising people that it's not about setting these people up to fail. If you put them from a small area, or reasonably small, to a medium size, I don't think that means that they're ready to take the biggest asset we have. And I think that's the piece you need to get with people. But the thing to make a 9-block work is the frequency. So it has to be consistent. You have to understand who gets assessed. So in the company I left, I got to a place where every single person was assessed on a 9-blocker. The input, so who actually participates in this decision-making piece, and how is it done? So I had a spreadsheet that we'd fill out. It was basically a rolling document, and we used to just add different tabs for, if we did January, then June, so we could look back. And it created quite a nice picture. There's other stuff on there which I'm not going to elaborate on. But the key part is on the back of that is about providing the feedback. So for me, when I'm doing a 9-blocker, complete this spreadsheet on the side. We write down what the development needs are, the strengths, and then we look at the actual feedback we're going to give them. So we articulate and formulate it there so that the manager doing the talent conversation has that. There is an actual basis of it. But it also means that everybody gets a message, which is very key to make these things come to life. In the first place I worked at, there was development roadmaps. So it was very clear. You walked into the business. At every level, you had 3 levels. So you had, I can't remember what it was called now. So you had like an entry level. Then you had like after 1 year, this was a level you should be at. And then you had an advanced level. So what that said is that for the whole year, you were expected to still be in training. But obviously for the first sort of probation bit, you had the key elements, if you like, and all the legal training would be done. After a year, you'd have a more advanced understanding. And this was across every single department that they had. And they had a lot of departments. And it was very good. I mean, the format was pretty much the same. It was listed all the different things that you had to do. And you had to literally, I remember when I first joined, you had to sign by every single individual element to say that you understood it. But it made it very clear. It made it very clear that this is what you had to understand. This is what you had to do. That was all technical based. And then if you were on a supervisor roadmap or a manager roadmap, then that's when you had things around behaviors and you had specific courses that was run either internally or an external course. So again, you had it quite clearly laid out for you, and the expectation with timescales was also there. So those are quite good. I really think that they work very well. That's the only place I've seen it though. And I guess, again, I don't know if I'm an advocate because I'm a product of that, but to me, it just makes complete sense. It's transparency, and I think when it comes to performance management, which is the reverse, I guess, of this, you got your basis to go on. The next thing is, how is the talent used? So is it used to cover gaps? So, we in the last podcast, I talk about secondments, but, if you've got someone who's on holiday or sick, is there someone that can step in? And why don't we let them step in? It doesn't have to be that they have to have more money or whatever. If you've got a environment where people know that if you are able to display your talent, that you have an opportunity, people will be willing to do that. I think the other thing is to understand the HR input. It is quite key because we are there to not just think of it as the performance number that's achieved. I think we add that basis to say, and what about the behavior, and what about their interactions, and what about, et cetera, et cetera. And it's important that we have that time. So, I've done sessions where we've done like a talent review on, I don't know, maybe, I think 9 managers. And it's taken us the whole morning, like 4 hours to do those 9 managers, because it's about having those discussions and that challenge with each other, and drawing on your own experiences with individuals that you have. That's the whole point of having 2 people do it. It's about being able to challenge and come to the right thing. But also from a HR point of view, it's a very good opportunity for you to demonstrate your understanding of the business and learn stuff. Recently, I've done that in the new place I'm at, and I learned so much, like genuinely so much about the business and the operation and the expectations. And, yes, we have job descriptions, but I don't think everyone's managed to their job description. I can't lie to you. If you ask me what my job description is for the role I do today, I won't be able to tell you. That's the honest truth. So it is about the input. And I think, as you go through these things, it's about expanding other people into it. Being confident that others have interaction with these people. The place I left, the administrators actually suggested they should have input because they actually do the assistance of these roles. And I don't know why, I never thought of it. But when they said that, I was like, that is a fucking good idea. Because, we all have different interactions, and actually the dependency in terms of things like data and reporting and all that, these guys would know straight away what they do or don't do for themselves. Because, I think they did too much myself, but there you go. Think about other opportunities as well. So if there's projects, can these people be involved? And I think it's quite a controversial one, the old project thing. I think we have to be careful when we say projects, like who's on there and are they talent friendly? Because the last thing you need is somebody thinking that they have a massive opportunity and they're around people that are perceivedly above them or are above them in terms of job title, and you get one absolute fucking dickhead who just really goes out of their way to make things difficult. Or the actual project itself is just difficult. And what I'm mindful of is that you don't want to just scare people away. You want people to feel like they have a contribution to make and there's a reason behind what they're doing. Some of these projects we're involved in, let's be real, sometimes they just fucking drag. And you think to yourself, how is it still going? And so if you're doing that as someone who's experienced and actually there to support this project, imagine the guy who's just, been told, yes, this is your opportunity. Yes, you've got the chance to shine. Yes, you got this and that. So we have to be mindful of that. And then the other thing is, this one's a bit more controversial, but in the last place I was at, there was a whole sort of transformation in that business anyway. And when a new HR director came on board, I remember we was talking about roles and they used to say to us, does the JD actually need to be changed? So even though I think the JDs had been reviewed maybe a year or 18 months before her arriving, she explained that if there was a consensus in the group and that actually raised the level of the community, so for example, if you're talking assistant managers, if it raised the whole level and actually 80-20 rule, 80% of them are doing it, then why is it on the job description? And then do you put it through for regrading? So it might be that actually they've designed their own step up in terms of grade or pay, which was a totally different way of thinking of things. I never thought of it like that. You always think to yourself, well, if they want a pay rise, they need to go up for the next level. But that was a completely different way of thinking, and that's something that stuck with me and something that I do still actively try to pursue. It's a very clever way of doing it. And look, when we're talking increase in salary across a community, obviously you have to think about the value that you're going to get for it and how much it's going to cost you. But the more you up a community, obviously you're not going to up them to the same level as the level above them, okay? So I'm not saying that we put those people out of work. What I am saying is if you give them more skills and more accountabilities or more scope, if you're a company that the salary banding is not where it needs to be, this is how you get it there. And then that's how you expand to attract external talent. So the next part is about looking after talent. Now this one is very dear to my heart. The first company I was with for years. And within I did under 10 years, and within those 10 years, I held 8 what you would call senior positions across HR and management. And that was always something we were sort of expecting because of that company and the size of it and how openly they moved things around. But what I found was, during my time, there was always an element of frustration that came because you'd think you got to a point and then either the role above that you would go for was removed, or the person who was going to get you there was moved, and then you ended up with some prick that you then had to get on side, and by the time you did, you probably just couldn't be fucking bothered anymore. So there's a chain effect with talent, if somebody's leadership style is what drives someone and motivates someone, you have to be aware that if you remove that, then potentially that person falls down, or they're lost in the process. So take that on board, HR people. Think about it. When you've got talent, when you're doing your switcheroonies, as you like, when you move your chess pieces around regions or departments or stores, whatever it is, think about the impact it has, not just on that individual, but those around them. Because I'm not saying you hold people back, but what I do see is that we don't think, sometimes these individual units work because of the teams that are there. And instead of disrupting that team, what you should maybe consider is how that person can get the experience and then share that experience. Because, you want the predecessor really to be within. Like the last business I was in, it was all individual business areas, right? And the customers were tied to those areas. So you'd want the come-through to come from within. And the structure was there within a location. The structure was there for it to happen in 80% of the locations. So, think about that. There are other ways to do it. The first thing I would also say, well, you can't say two things first. So another thing I would say is give open and honest feedback on the fucking spot. On the spot. That is the worst thing, is if you have someone who has, perceived as talent, and you don't give them the feedback and they just keep doing the mistake, or they keep doing something that's, not seen as good or positive, and you have to be honest with people. One of the worst things I see is managers who are intimidated to say to someone, do you know what, yes, you are going to be good, but this is what you need to do differently, or this is the areas of focus. That's one of the things I was very fortunate to have as a tool, is the ability to tell people exactly what I think and support it. And, managers need to support it too. When you're doing talent reviews, like the 9 blockers or whatever, your manager's contributing, and, you don't force what you think is right. At the end of the day, you both have to agree. So if somebody's a low performer and they'll develop in terms of potential, then that person needs to know that. And that message needs to come from the line manager, not this whole thing of HR to support, because they need to manage that informal bit. But if they're talent, they need to also be the ones to say that they believe that they're talent and also how they're going to support them in their journey. Have mentors. This is key. Have people within the business that can support your talent, not just the manager. So yes, the manager assumes responsibility and accountability for that person's journey, as do you in HR. I'm pointing at you. But you need mentors that are outside of the HR and line manager. You need people that are going to be there. And these have to be people that you can trust, because mentors are really valuable. I've never had one, but I've seen, again, last company I worked at, we had this individual. I mean, I didn't really know them. I didn't have much time with them. But when I took that area over, I was told that this person had a mentor. And it was to support them with confidence, and it was to support them with their journey and literally going up to basically the second highest level in the company. And, I didn't know that they did these things, so I was quite surprised in the first instance. But when I spoke to this individual and the way that they conducted themselves and the way that they explained and articulated things, I was just astounded that somebody from that industry for that long had that thought process. And when I asked them, I said, how have you developed this? Because, that's just not an actual trait of this industry. They explained it was the mentor, and they explained that, it's a comfort zone. It was something where they could share, bounce things off, and actually get what the real world looks like. Because this mentor was actually from a competitor, which sounds ludicrous, but one of the things I found in the last workplace was we were starting to be very open. I mean, I remember my last role, my HR director was quite open, and they said to me, look, you've got gaps, not because you're rubbish, but because you just aren't exposed to stuff. And she said, that's always going to be something that's going to hold you back unless we do something about it. And they actually suggested to me that I get seconded to another business for like 2 months to actually just see what something else is like. So they were actually willing to lose me from my role for 2 months for my own development, to get skills that I would never need to use in that business. Now that's either a really good exit or it's genuine. And what they explained to me was, they said, today you don't need to use it, but you don't know, maybe in 5 years this business might be in a different place and you might need those skills. And if you're still here, we want you to be here. So we'd rather invest in 2 months of you not being here to enable you to get some skills that might help us, along with all the experience of the business and everything you had. And I can't lie to you, that was like, I don't know. I mean, that still sits with me. I mean, that conversation must have been 18 months ago now. I still remember it. I mean, we was in McDonald's. There you go. You need to understand the person's journey that they've been through. So that is also quite key. And as you get to know your talent, you want them to open up. You want them to share the hardships and stuff that they've been through. More than anything, to see what their resilience is. That's what I use it as. But you need to know, because, when I think back to my own journey, it wasn't until I left that first company. I've only worked for 4 companies. The very first one doesn't count because that was selling people shit over the phone. So I don't count that. And I got dismissed from that one. So I just don't count it. Just to clarify, at that point I was 18 years old and my shift manager took my mobile phone. I had the Nokia phone, the one with the booty. We remember that? I think it was like one of the first ones with the mobile, with the internet on it. She took my phone and slammed it down on the desk. So in an act of, what's the word? In an act of, oh man, there's a really cool word. In an act of unity, that's not the word I'm looking for. There's Somebody remind me, my mind's a bit blank. It's 9 o'clock at night. But in an act of unity, I took her phone and did the same. Apparently that wasn't the right thing to do. But yeah, anyway, look. I know what I've been through within the first company. That always stays with me. I know what it's like to have your hopes high. I know what it's like to start planning what you're going to do with your 15k salary and it never comes. I know what it's like to be on a low income and doing a hell of a lot and not feel like you're being rewarded for it. But at the same time, I also know what it's like when you leave that place with all the skills, resilience, learnings, bad experiences, immense training, and get everything that was coming to you. And so you need to understand what people have been through, even those above you. Like, I always listen to these stories that people tell me because, you know, successful people are in the room in front of you, right? Now, I always say to people who are talent, you want to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And when you get to a certain point in life, like, you know, I think I read somewhere, I can't remember how many years ago now, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that the perceived comfortable salary was 75 grand a year. Until that point, people didn't feel comfortable. What I also know from my experience is if you're on that salary, you very rarely lose it. You very rarely lose it. Once you're in that box, I mean, I've never been there, let's just clarify that. But when you're in there, you don't lose that. So, understanding those people who have achieved it, understanding their journey, what did they do? How did they do it? You know, not everyone's an academic. The next thing is ensuring that those who are considered talent are actually kept in the loop. And what I've put here is communication around decisions. So if you respect someone and you think they're talented and you think that you're going to be using them to roll something out or whatever, they need to be involved. So they might not be involved in the project, but you want their buy-in, forward thinking. You might even want their analysis of what you're doing. You might even want their sort of approval even. If we think about the actual end user experience, because that's something that goes amiss 99% of the times, right? You want to allow for an environment to explore new ways of working. In my current location, we did some interviews for supervisor level roles. And I remember that there was a perception that we have favorites and all this stuff. I say we, I weren't even around before, but we. And I remember they all got dressed for the occasion, which was really cool to see. Like I smile thinking about it now. These people really took it seriously. But what really came through in those interviews was their mindset. And they'd actually done research to take part in the interview. They didn't just show up. It wasn't just, well, it's only an increase that is minute, and therefore I'm just going to show up and get it. They actually had really good answers, and it was based on observations and things that they'd seen. And they wanted to suggest how we could do things better. Like I think some of them used the interview just to present how they could do things better. And I don't think we should be shooting those things down. That's, you need an environment that allows that. That's where people see that, okay, if I challenge something or if I think something different, I actually have the opportunity to change how things are done. And that gives people a sense of pride. Don't put someone in a role or give them a task designed to set them up to fail. So think about it with your leader. Yeah, when someone's getting something, this kind of comes back to what I was saying about the prepare and ready bit. Don't set them up to fail. I see that so many times where we set people up to fail because we've hyped them up, bro. Like, yes, let's give them the biggest fucking thing that we have. Even though they don't know how to manage something that size. They know how to manage. They have the credentials. They can speak it through. But is giving someone the biggest thing the right thing to do? Not always. But then there are some people who thrive on it. My first actual leadership role was in the biggest department we had in the retail place that I worked, which was also perceived to be the hardest one. But what worked for me wasn't the technical side, it was my ability to work with people and speak to people. I was 21 at the time, and I should have been really daunted by the whole thing, to be fair. It wasn't, I look back now and I think, how did I fucking do that? It must have been the fact that I was only 21 and naive, but, it doesn't always work. I've seen people get that same department before I took it and fail, and I've seen people with more experience than me afterwards take it and fail. One manager that we had, the last manager that they had in that department, ran it to the ground. But that person was our perceivedly best manager. So how did they do that? It's not for everyone. And that's the thing you have to think about. Not every task is for everyone. Sometimes keeping people in their comfort zone is the right thing to do. Understand that mistakes will be made. Cannot express that anymore. I think that's one of the things in HR that we prevent our own from developing, because we don't allow for a safety net for mistakes. Mistakes will happen. It's about how you talk it through. It's not about shouting at someone. It's not about kicking off at someone. It's about talking it through and asking them what they would do differently. I think the other thing is to keep the learning measured. So don't just chuck them in at the deep end. So we kind of said that, I guess, but, expecting them to learn everything in a very short time is what I mean. Like, give them a reasonable amount of time. I think one of the things that first retailer I worked at, yes, we had a roadmap, but when you got your first sort of leadership role, what they wanted you to do in the first 3 months was, I don't think, really achievable when you think about that environment and what you had to do in terms of the actual job itself, let alone then learning. You had to learn the technical side too, as well as the behavior side. You had to attend workshops that were days. It was a bit too much. Yes, they provided the facility for you to do it, but how much of it did you retain? That would be my question. I mean, some of these sessions were based on workbooks that were 80 pages a piece, and you had something like 12 of those to do in 3 months. That is intense. But I'm still here. So, the bit that we think doesn't happen, but it does, losing talent. Yes. So, what's everyone's thoughts? Losing talent. So for me, I just accept it. I guess when I say I accept it, I've never worked in a business where we were top end payers. So maybe that's why. But at the same time, being the perceived breeding ground for me is not a bad thing, because I think that's how you always get the best of what's new and current in terms of generational times. I don't know what I was trying to say there. Basically, those out of college or those who are new into the industry. You get industries completely fall apart and you get an influx of people invading your industry, whatever way, whether it's the college route or the industry route. But you get the best pick because they're not going to go for the highest paid roles, are they? I mean, some will. Good luck. Majority don't. So there is a way to replace. The other thing is, if you lose talent, if you've done the bit around having the predecessor lined up, it's not as big a deal. It means that you might have to explore bringing that training forward or chucking them in at the deep end if you like, but allowing them maybe a window to also do training at the same time, or having them have a mentor. There's ways around it. In terms of talent, you're going to lose talent for more money, leading on from what I just said. And if you can't compete, don't try to compete. I think the only thing you can do is mention what the positives are. So if you've got a much better structure and development opportunities, and say that. But, if someone's going to offer your person 10K more plus a bonus of 5K, they're probably going to go. look at the structure around you. Is there a gap? So, when we're talking about that person leaving, you might be able to create a unique opportunity. So, that's something I've seen in the last place. We had somebody who was a very long service. In the actual role that he was in, he was useless. But he had a very unique skill that nobody ever exploited until a competitor basically said to him, do you know what? You're very good at this. So we're going to give you your whole division. We're going to give you this. Off you go. So this guy basically said to us, he said, look, I don't want to go there, but I wanted to, be promoted. I had to go. It didn't work out. And now I've got the opportunity to do what I absolutely love. What do you want to do? We debated it because the guy was not a high performer. I can't lie, I didn't really rate him. But the business did. And, I couldn't argue with what they were saying in terms of the monetary value. So we actually just set him up ourselves. And as far as I know, he's done really well. He's got his own team. We actually had such a disjointed thing for that. But it's worked. Everything's worked out for them, I believe. I don't know what the end of year result was because I wasn't there. But as far as I know, he hit all targets for the 2 months that I was there while he had it. So, think about that. Is there an opportunity? Then there probably isn't going to be, but if you have that business for the scope for it, think about it. Ensure the exit interview is complete. Yeah, you should be doing that anyway, but make sure it's complete and give that feedback to whoever needs to hear it. That is very important. I do that all the time. If I see stuff, I give it anyway, positive or not. I think we need to celebrate both, but if there's something that's highlighted in terms of what could be done differently and how that person was managed or trained, we need to be better. The next thing is don't cock block. Don't cock block. If you can't match it, if you can't do anything, let that person be. Let them go on and do their thing. I was very grateful when I left my last employer. I had a really good time there when I think back. And I enjoyed it. I really did. I got so much out of it, both personally and in terms of reward and stuff. But when I told my manager that I was leaving, she wasn't happy at all. But once I explained my reasons, she was cool. She's very supportive. Even to this day, if I message her, she'll reply. She offered me not exclusive, but use of the contacts and stuff that she has. And that's something I'll always remember. And I can't lie, if she ever needed anything, I would try to facilitate it. I remember I left during a pandemic. I left the team behind. And I even offered, I said, just leave a laptop with me. I can do stuff to help in the evening, help the guys. Just don't delete my account. Don't have to pay me. I'm not on payroll. And that's purely because of how cool she was, how supportive she was. And she still continues to be. So it's worth not cock blocking because you never know when you're going to cross someone's paths again. And that's one thing. I mean, for all I know, she might think I'm absolutely useless, yeah? Let's put it out there. She might think that. And when I left, she might think, fuck that, I'm not going to give him any of that. But the reality is, if she did ever come knocking, of course I'd try to help or listen to what she has to say or whatever. If the person's working a notice, don't fucking alienate them. Yeah, think about how you're treating these people and think about how the people around are seeing it. Because, I see it so many times. Somebody resigns and they're just literally the scum of the earth. They're literally treated like, rebel scum, Star Wars. Allow it, man. That person's giving you time of their life. Give them some fucking respect. If you couldn't do something to keep them, chill, bro. And that's what I always tell people, because I don't want, that's going to be the last impression for the person underneath them who potentially could take their place. So if they see how you're treating that person after 10 years service, what's the psychological impact on the person going into that role? Think about it. And HR, this is where we have to be very careful here. Managing those who we think are talent. We need to support the manager in making sure that they don't alienate the person that could be going in. That is key. If you offer a salary to retain someone, make sure it's aligned to the peer group or the grade group. Very important. The last company I was at, they just used to chuck it at people like, here, take $7,000. Yeah, that takes them $5,000 over the grade limit. Just think about it. And the other thing is, I think it's okay to be the industry's trainer. The last company I worked for, there used to be 5 companies. And one of the companies they had was literally seen as a feeder. They called them the college of the industry. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because they may have been the college of the industry in the 90s. But when I was there, I'd heard about all these people. I mean, it was a very incestuous industry, I guess, and maybe that's why they were there. But you had the best, I look at 2 of the individuals who went on to become like area managers and stuff. One of them definitely could become a regional director. In fact, both of them could. And they still refer back to what they did in the 90s. And they're back. And, there are people who I've met and interviewed in the industry from external companies who had actually worked for the same company I was at for like about 20 years prior to the interview, and they still reference the stuff. So that's not a bad thing. And I think the other thing is this myth of not taking people back after they've left. Get over it, man. It's cool. If they did a job for you and they know the systems and they know everything, why are you going to be aggy about it? I don't get it. The time it takes to train people up sometimes as new into the industry or new into a business or whatever. If you got someone who only left a year ago and not that much has changed and you rated them, I don't see the problem. So, recruiting talent. Now, we've got a whole session on recruitment in Season 3. Yeah, there's a Season 3. So I'm not going to go too in-depth. Plus, I'm conscious. I think we've actually hit 1 hour. We're on 57 minutes. This is going to be the longest podcast I've done. I knew this was going to happen because this is my favorite subject. Anyway, so first of all, ensure the JD and package is correct ahead of advertising the role. This is very key. If you're looking at a role that only had one person in it or not so many people in it, review it. Does it need changing? Does it need to be modernized? And review the package. If you had feedback to say the package is incorrect, check that. Do your analysis. In terms of the gap, hire for the team gap, not to replace the person that's left. This is very important. I see this go amiss quite a lot of times. Like, when you hire someone into the business, like, I hear it a lot of the time, we want people in the industry. That's everywhere I've worked. We want people in the industry. But sometimes it's the opportunity to mix things up a bit. Like, if you've got 87% of the people from the industry, why not bring someone from outside? Now, with that, you're going to have to make sure they're resilient, because it's going to be a fucking struggle if everyone's stuck in 1972. But it gives you an opportunity to shape what you're looking at. Like, literally today we did some interviews, and it was at like a supervisory level role. And the 2 candidates we had, we wasn't recruiting from my site. I'm not going to lie. If that was from my site, I'd take both of them. Just the behaviors alone, just the mindset and everything. And sometimes that's what you need to freshen things up, is to bring someone who has an understanding of what it is your journey is. So like, if you've got someone coming from a company where they've already been through it, they've already been through that pain and they understand it, they're able to articulate it, why not? Oh, that's good. I've just said, so don't just look in the industry. I'm an advocate of mixing it up. The last place I worked, we had a director who was very keen. He wasn't from the industry, you see. I wasn't from the industry. I think the whole senior team, so that top tier team, wasn't from the industry. Now, at first, when we hired from outside the industry, we had a very heavy presence of those old school. We chucked it in, old school and new school HR. Did you get what we did there? They had a very old school mentality and mindset, and it was poisonous. So when you brought in one external person who was trying to change things for the better, they just got shot down and moved out of the business. So when you're doing that, it's very important that there's a community of people from outside the business. So as I was leaving, we had a very strong community of people from outside the industry, and they had a really good sort of cohort, if you like, unofficially, and that enabled them to go through the journey together. And it helped us so much, because it's very different. You've got one person saying this is how you should do something, or suggesting how you do something, compared to 10. Think about it. Think about what is in store for the next 12 months when you're hiring someone, not the 12 months previous. So, don't think about the performance of last year. Yes, do factor it in, but think about what you want that role to achieve in the next 12 months, and think about the behaviors that are required. Use presentations and give a true reflection of what's going on when you're interviewing someone. So not necessarily at first stage, but if you're getting, some interview processes can be 3 stages. You've got telephone, first stage, second stage. If someone's at the second stage, that means you like them, or somebody likes them. And you're going to get a sense for people. And answer the questions honestly that they ask you. Because the last thing you want to do is get someone who's really good and draw the fucking life out of them. Because they just become resentful. And what I came to learn is that, if you're in a local region, area, whatever, if there's bad things to be said, people who have had a bad experience who are outside the industry will just write you off. And it'll be very difficult for you to attract outside of your industry, because that'll be on LinkedIn or Glassdoor or something. And how do you reverse that? So think about it. Don't just interview one person. Please don't just interview one person. Even if that's internal. Interview a range of people. See what's out there. Okay, yes, you're only going to hire one, but you might find people who you want to put on development plans and stuff like that. So think about it. Test a person's capacity when you're doing these interviews, because they're going to need to learn a lot. As I mentioned previously, when I was doing that supervisor training. I wish somebody had thought about that. Did I actually have the capacity? Because the turnover rate was very high. And now that I look back, it was because of the lack of capacity of people. You're not paying a lot, so you're not getting the best. You're usually breeding from within. So yes, they might have had all the advanced training in their role, but you're moving them off the department. So how do they get to advanced level in a new department whilst learning behaviors? Just saying. And then the other thing is, look, some people are just too good for your company. And that's fine. Be mindful of it. So, training talent. So the first thing is that anyone you identify as talent should have a development plan. I realised I've waited until point 7 to actually mention this, but it seems like it would fit here. And you probably already know that they should have a development plan, right? Hopefully. So look, the development plan should be in place to focus on what it is they need to focus on. For me, I guess the development plans were quite easy because we did it as part of our 9 blocker to identify what the development areas were. We always looked at technical and behavioural. So it was literally just transferred. So that's probably why I've just totally bypass the whole thing. But other companies will have clear development plans anyway that will be aligned to the roadmap. So it really depends on your organization. I guess if you don't have a talent review, then yes, you would need a development plan. But it might be a bit harder for you to put one together if you don't have a structured way of doing that. So be mindful, the development plan should capture not achievable as in like easy, but achievable development objectives for the year. It should be unique to the individual, I would say. If it's not roadmap based, I mean, it's quite difficult. The two examples I've worked with is pretty clear cut. I mean, the reviews would tell you. So some of the things that would come out would be things like business maturity. That was like the biggest one. People just not there in terms of that. Behaving immaturely, childish sort of squabbles, or spending too much time on the phone to their mate, whatever. Those kind of things. So, yeah. That's what I'm going to say about that. I think that's quite basic. So, back to my notes. Any training that you do, ensure the materials are reflective of where the business is going and is present or future-proof at the least. Because some of the worst things I see is you get people being trained on things from 2017 and you're in 2019 and you have a completely different process. Or the business has changed the way of doing something and that's not reflected in the training, and therefore it now becomes null and void. Adapt the training group on group. So if you have cohort groups, learn from some of the failures as well. If you see things that the group didn't do so well. So again, first company I worked for, everything was done in cohorts. Everything was succinct. You had two cohorts a year, and they alternated, and you knew what group, who was in what group, where they went. And, the company had a very good way of making sure that those succeeded. But those who failed, we always took away what they failed on and how we could make it better. And how do we implement that into the current cohort? So the cohorts constantly got better and better, learning from the mistake of those above them. Not above them, those before them. And that's what you want, If something doesn't work, you want to also have a look at yourself and make sure that that is, as best as possible, eradicated. Ask for feedback on training. I think, asking for feedback in the session I don't agree with, because no one's going to tell you were shit. I mean, you might get it. Saying that, probably the last place I worked at, they probably would tell me. But, I think if you're going to ask for feedback, you want that to be in isolation and in a moment of reflection, not on the day. For me, if you've got someone who's gone through 8 hours or 2 8 hours of intense training, you want them to be able to reflect on what they learned and explain how that's been used in practice as well. Ensure that the people you choose to train are engaging. So choosing someone that's just going to read off a script isn't going to work. There's no way I could make this podcast last this long. Where are we? An hour and 10 minutes. If I didn't add my own content to it. And the other thing is, in terms of engagement, when you've got people there, you need people to be able to refer to what they've done. Now, I don't have a problem with people referring to what they did in 2001. I don't. I think they're still relevant. And look, even if someone refers to what they did in 1962, I don't have a problem with it. But what they also need to do is explain what is expected going forward and how we go about it. And if there's a crossover, then good. That's a cool thing. I think sometimes being able to identify something that has lasted the test of time is a good thing. Do you have an apprenticeship levy? And if you do, can we use that bad boy? Let's use that shit. Now, I think the reality is that no one has the time to actually think about how we divvy this up and how we advertise and all that kind of stuff. But for me, you'd be using that to tie people into your business. Now, you can't tie them in terms of a learning agreement, which I'm going to come to in a minute. But you can tie them in by giving them that investment, you know. What a way to say to someone, we value you. We're going to use £10,000 worth of training on your ass. And if you've got the right culture, people will respect that. So then you've got a toxic environment of people like, I'm going to take your 10,000 and then I'm going to bounce. So, you know, it is about the environment around to make those kind of things work. But the apprenticeships, we have to understand that they are time consuming for people. You know, doing studies while working isn't easy. And, you know, some of these apprenticeships, they need 20% of their working week to focus on it, whether that's education in school, school environment rather, or whether that's on the job, but 20% time focus on projects or whatever. And you need to allow that, because again, if you want people to do the same thing, they're not going to do it if they see the person before them get a hard time. So again, think about the wider piece. Ensure time is given for training. Like, I know we spoke about the 3 months supervisory in the first company, but, you know, just give the actual time. Not just to get trained, but for them to actually implement it too. You know, taking away something from a classroom and working out how you're going to do it isn't easy for a lot of people. So you need to facilitate that. You need to talk them through it as HR. You know, what are you going to implement? What is it that took away that really stood out for you? And allowing them that. When you're doing the training, allow for input from the individual and allow for challenge. You know, as I said, I mentioned earlier, you know, you're going to have different people from different backgrounds, from different countries, from different educations, whatever. And for me, I'm always learning. So it's cool for me. I like to hear what people can add to me. And that's how you should be as a business. You know, you want to learn from your employees. Even in terms of HR, like, you know, I don't know everything. You can see that from these podcasts. I don't know everything. And there are going to be people that have absolutely no affiliation with HR, but will school me. Like, I got this thing going on right now. I don't fucking know what the answer is the honest truth. And I can't lie to you. What the employee is saying makes complete fucking sense and is the same thing I've seen everywhere else. But at the moment, I have to stand by our policies and procedures because I ain't got nothing to show me what they're actually talking about anyway. But I'm open to it if they're right. You see what I mean? Constantly learning. The learner's agreement, aka you were stuck with us for 2 years. Learning agreements, I guess, probably because of the apprenticeship levy, are becoming less of a thing. But look, we can still use them. So if your business funds education for its employees, then a learner's agreement is basically a way of saying, we'll pay for this course for you, but if you leave them in a certain amount of time, you're going to pay us back a certain amount of money. So sometimes it's, if they leave within 2 years, they got to pay back 50%. If they leave after 1 year, is 100%. It varies. So look, just get an understanding of what you have. But that's if they resign and leave. Obviously, if you make them redundant or, you know, well, I've seen that if they get dismissed, they have to pay it back too. I don't know if legally you can do that. If it's gross misconduct, probably could. I don't know. But the learners' agreements will have that. I haven't seen that in the ones I've worked with anyway. I've just heard of it. I think the thing is, though, because I actually had a learners' agreement that expired the month before I resigned. That wasn't planned at all. It just happened. So don't think that people are just planning some shit. Sometimes life just happens. And I think the other thing is, I would say to you that if somebody has given that value back in terms of what they've done for your business, I would seriously review taking £1,000 off them, of their final salary, especially if they're long service. I get it that the learners' agreement is there for a reason, so I'm not saying that we just ignore it, but I would have a view, because I think, like, I've seen where learners' agreements haven't been clawed back, and then you got ones where they are in the same company, and you think, well, this person only was here for like 4 years, but I was here for 20 years, and I did all of this. And even though you gave me this education, this is what value I added. And this is what you got back. So just, I don't know, maybe think about it. If someone opts to do an apprenticeship, are they capable of doing it? And I don't mean intelligence-wise. I mean, do they have the capacity to do it in terms of running their day job? The job, they might be getting the apprenticeship based on a promotion. So they got to learn a new job, add a new education skill. And let's just think about it. Again, let's not set people up to fail. And the other thing is, apprenticeships can be outside a role. You know, if you're in a business that has an IT department, a legal department, or whatever department, there's hundreds of apprenticeships out there. You know, there's HR apprenticeships. So if somebody opts to do something that your business has, I would seriously consider that individual, what they're like as a person, and actually, would they actually succeed if they had that further education? And could they do a role in the business? That's what forward thinking is about. So this is the first time I've actually had a break whilst recording, because this is just going on. We're at an hour and 16 minutes of recording anyway. So yeah, I actually had a 5-minute break. Don't tell anyone. I know you're supposed to work 6 hours before you can have a break. Paid break. Depends on your organization. But anyway, support. So the first thing is to understand that being talent is difficult. It comes with a pressure. It comes with expectation. It comes with people looking up to you. There's a load of things that come with it. Like, I remember when I first got promoted, one of the things that was said to me, now, I don't know if we're allowed to do it, but we're going to do it anyway. This is my podcast. I remember when I got promoted the first time, and the senior team was all white, and I'm not white. And that's probably happened as well in my HR career too. And I've had people sort of say to me, like, the magnitude of what you're doing. You're the only non-white person. You're the only ethnic in your team. And I've never, look, I just want to put it out there, I've never thought of it like that. You can probably see I'm quite happy-go-lucky. I just didn't or don't. Until, I mean, I've had incidents, but that's not the point here. But that in itself was a pressure I just didn't know how to take. Like, that's one thing, even, I mean, no, it's not happened here, but in the last role it did. And again, even though I'd had that experience for a good 10 years, I still sort of struggle with it. So look, things to consider in terms of why being a talent is hard. So, expectation from the business and themselves. You know, if you've been given the opportunity, you really want to succeed, don't you? I think those who are considered talent can either overwork themselves or be overworked. And that just creates burnout. And then you end up with someone who's pointless having around. Frustrations. So if they're learning stuff and they can't put it into practice, or they're aware of something and they can't do it, that becomes really difficult. And I think you then find individuals will be in a place of, why am I even here if I can't add value? Other peers, so, you know, they're in a new peer group and the peers around them, how are they being supported? What's the perception, you know? I remember when I first got into HR, wow. You know, I didn't know nothing. I'd never done, I didn't even know what HR was. I'm going to put it out there. I didn't even know what they were when I got into the role. So how did people support me? You know, people were frustrated with me because I didn't know things. Look at me now. But anyway. Senior interactions. Now, I've touched on this throughout the podcast, some of the bad experiences I've had. But that kind of stuff, I have seen people leave or step down or whatever because of how they're treated by those above them, or those who are perceived to have the decision over their careers. And if you're HR and if you're aware of it, put a fucking stop to it. Like, the worst part about the whole situation I was in was that the HR manager that I worked for like 18 months, maybe even more than that, and I did really try and do so much for that individual. At a time when I needed them, they just literally told me I was wrong. Like, just because I stood up for myself. And even then, I did it off the shop floor. I did it in a respectable way. And I was told I was wrong, and I was like, what? And that's something that will always stay with me, that feeling. You know, that was my own, that's someone I did so much for. And they, you know, the one time, that's the only time they had, well, saying that, they may have had to always protect me because the senior managers didn't like me. So there may have been that, to be fair, now on reflection. But, you know, in front of me, that was the only time I'd seen it. And zero defense. You know, it was like the Arsenal back four. Totally fucking ineffective at times. But the other thing with those senior interactions is the learning you take from it. You know, because if that's deemed to be okay and appropriate, you'll get people who don't challenge it and actually embrace that style as well. And that's also wrong. So we have to think about this. You know, it is about the wider picture. I said that quite a few times today. It's about the wider picture. If the department or location where you're sending the individual is just not right for them, that can be really hard. So the first company I was at, hundreds of locations in the UK. I would probably say 100 locations in London. No, actually, maybe not. But there was a lot. And you used to get moved around. And it didn't always work, you know. I'm of a particular part of London through and through. If you know London, you probably can tell what part of London I'm from. Putting me on the other side just doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. Because we just don't know each other that way. You know, we don't have those interactions. It didn't work then. I mean, you know, I think about now, the last role. I worked in London and Birmingham and Leeds and with people from Manchester. And when I first got to Leeds, I was lost, bruv. Like, I'd never been to Leeds up until that point. And I think that's the most north I'd ever been, apart from a weekend to Scotland. So getting to Leeds after a 3.5 hour drive and being called duck. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I didn't even know that they were calling me a duck. And then I had to work out what the fuck that actually means. So expecting me to have the same impression, of course it didn't work at first. I mean, to be fair, we all got on really well. But yeah, I mean, the message I was delivering wasn't great. It was nothing to do with talent or anything like that. So let's just put it out there. But, you know, it's a very amicable ending to the situation after all. But, you know, when I went back after we did what we did, yeah, it was okay. We got on. But I still don't know what they were saying. You know, like, I didn't get it. Like, things that I thought were sarcasm, they were being dead serious. So you have to think about that when you're moving people around. The other thing you know, I'm going to put it out there. Londoners and Birmingham people, Brums, is that what they call them? Brummies? I shouldn't have done that. Fuck it anyway. Just, I don't know. Are we compatible? I don't know. I mean, I know Birmingham quite well. I've had vast experience of being in Birmingham. I've done like a stint in Birmingham. Not just work, but in my personal life too. And even in my personal life, I just don't think there's a gel there. So think about it when you're moving people around. The other thing is the reportees. So I've now got a team. Are they supporting me? You know, I think that integration process when you get someone new into a team is difficult. And if it's not supported for someone very new to role, like new to management or people management, they're going to struggle. You know, people are going to take the fucking piss, aren't they? You know it. And the thing is, in HR, you probably know who those people are as well. So, you know, and one thing I always used to do with managers was take the opportunity to actually highlight who they're, this sounds really bad, not who I'm labeling as their bad people, but the ones to sort of give a bit more attention to. That's the more politically correct way, isn't it? If the role's not working, think about the following. First, you need to outline it's not working. Tell the guy or gal or person, and give them the opportunity to at least have a go at correcting it or achieving it, like, working to the standards you want. Put targets in or training, Make it clear that, there is something going on and we need to do something about it. Think about you yourself. Have you done enough to support this individual? Like, let's just be real. Have we actually trained them? Like, that's what I always go back to. I mean, I know it's not performance management. We're talking about talent, but, what I say to people is be practical. Yeah? Have you actually given them the basis that they need? Do they know why, what they have to do? Because this whole thing of, they were trained. Well, who trained them? And then you find out it was an employee. They ain't being trained. That's bullshit. They might have been shown a process. How do you even know that employee does it the way that the guide says that you should do it anyway? So, think about the actual training before we start saying they've had the training. Or if they've had it, was it even relevant in today's world? Explain the next steps. So if you have to step this person down or, it's not working out, you need to explain what could happen or what is going to happen. Once you've stepped them down, agree what the communication is going to be to the team and the wider business or area. Because that's quite difficult for someone. If they've had a go at something, so I have seen this. The guy I told you about who we gave his own department, he stepped up, took on that regional role, was an absolute fucking car crash in the role. Just wasn't the right personality, wasn't the right behavior. I mean, it wasn't something I condoned in terms of signing off. It was above my pay grade. But we had to think about how we're going to say that, after 3 months, he's going back to a role he left, but also going from a very successful role that he left to a very small version of it. And you have to be sensitive to individuals, In that instance, that person should never have been in the role. So it's our fault that he was there. So we have to manage that transition back. And then it's about, how you support them back in that role. Because each person acts differently. I mean, I've stepped down. And that was off my own accord. That was because I just had enough of being a leader and I wanted to go traveling. And I just wanted a break. And I knew that in that business where I was at, there's always going to be an opportunity. So I was prepared to, the reality was every year you had a cycle, if you like, of switchovers. But I stepped down because I just wanted a break. And it's about how you transition that person. I hadn't been an entry-level role for, at that point, we're talking 6 years. It wasn't hard for me personally. I was looking forward to it. I can't lie. It was the best thing I did. But those around me didn't feel comfortable with it. People I had trained were now managing me and having to have conversations with me about my pick rates and whatever it was. So I get that. And you have to think about how that's going to happen. But at the same time, what was good was on the weekends I used to support in terms of running the department because that's what I did and workload was light. So there was a bit of reward for me for what I did as well. And I think I had till 12 o'clock shifts. It was like I never missed a game of football anymore. But there you go. So, success. Let's talk success. So, the first thing is highlight all successes. And I don't mean just put it in a handbook. I mean, put it somewhere. Let people visualize it, The last company I was at, we had a new general manager for the company. And he was from the USA. And he had this thing. I can't remember what it was called, but it was basically a wall in head office, and it was basically our branch staff, and it had people who got promoted that year, all this kind of stuff, and that's what you want to see. I mean, we bring it to life in terms of our reporting and stuff, so we have visibility of it, and we're going to use that as our figures as HR, as yes, look at the talent we promoted, but people need to see that journey. And I think the first company I was at as well, they had it. So they had a picture of everyone who got promoted. I mean, obviously, if they got demoted, the picture got taken down, which I guess comes with it. But people understood. People knew where they stood. So, yeah, that was quite a good thing to have. And, they had their promotion and a bit of, what they want to do for the next 12 months. If there's sign-off, a sign-off process to get promoted, ensure that panel is booked timely and that person has the opportunity to prepare for it. So, there are companies where you have to go through various panels, and the last thing you need is to be notified of a panel. Like, I think with my one year I missed panel, and then 1 year I got invited. I was supposed to be on the second panel for the year, so I wasn't even expecting to be on the first one, but I got a phone call with literally 4 hours notice that said, if you're able to, we have a space available, so you can do it. At which point I said, okay, that's a bit short notice, but I still have availability to do the next one. They said, what if you reject this one? Then there's every possibility that we might refuse to take you on the next one. Well, what the fuck is that, man? Why couldn't you call someone else then, innit? Some nonsense, some madness. So, yeah. If there's a promotion due, plan the transition for that person to leave their previous role. I think the worst thing is when someone gets promoted and then they still have to do their old job. That defeats the whole purpose of it. I mean, if you got to recruit someone external, you got to train someone internally. Yes, have that person help the recruitment or support the training, but set the, enroll date further down the line. Ensure that the handover is done. Ensure that, the targets for that person coming into the role, replacing your person that's getting promoted, has their targets and the responsibilities are outlined. Because you want that person to, yes, be able to contact that person if there's an issue. Okay, I'm not saying that there should be zero interactions, but you don't want that person still dealing with customer complaints and stuff. That's just irresponsible and totally dismissive of that person's promotion and what they've worked hard for. Think about the communication. So letting people know that this is the person who's now doing this role. Letting them know who the person they need to go to for the previous errors was. The communication piece is key. The worst thing is you go around a business and you rock up. It's even happened to me. I've gone somewhere as a more senior role, and I've literally had the person who is below me telling me to go and sweep the floor. What? The thing is, I'll do it. I'm not even gonna lie, I'll do it. But yeah, it's a bit piss poor, and then you have that awkward scenario when they find out, oh, okay. You're just avoidable, isn't it? If you're the person losing the talent to another department or another area of the business, let go of them. Don't be difficult about their notice. Internal notice period. I see people always go for, I want them for 12 weeks. Come on, we're talking a whole quarter, man. Let that person be. Let them get on with their journey. Be realistic. Continuous improvement should be in place, so keep those one-to-ones going. Make sure those reviews happen. Ensure that you have a line of open communication between you and your potential talent person. Look at the tasks that you have for this individual, and if it's somebody who is not seen as talent yet, but someone that you want to test, share some of your responsibilities. That's one thing I learned when I was the manager of that sort of high level department. I used to look at it and I'd be like, why am I doing this? Is this really a manager's role? It might be perceived, but is it? And so I used to share it with my team leaders and stuff, and I used to get them to do activities, and they've all gone on to become really good managers and stuff. Like, all of them have gone on to do really well. So, and that's my ethos was, I can do anything they can do, but also I might not be here tomorrow for whatever reason. I do work by that principle. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, someone should be able to take my laptop. Apart from not knowing my password, they should be able to do the rest of it. And look, facilitate ideas, interpretations. If you have a message that you're going to deliver, let the person who's talent listen to that message. Let them understand. Let them tell you what they hear. Consult with these people. There's a reason why you've identified them as talent in the first place, but also allow their ideas to flourish. Sometimes you're going to hear stuff that you never thought of. That's fine. Let that be the case. Let people explore their own thought processes. Let them continue to make improvement and work with them. So, yeah. So that's it. That is the end of season 2. Where are we? Today is the 2nd of February. I don't know when this is going to be released. But, yeah, we've done it. So, just to put it out there, I don't know. Well, season 3 has been mapped. None of the episodes have been written, but it has been mapped. But I want to spend some time focusing on the branding, focusing on making the sort of descriptions and stuff like that better. So I don't know how long that's going to take. My cycle to release podcasts is every 2 weeks. I guess in theory, this is all recorded, which is the longest part. So I could, in theory, release it weekly. But I think I'll stick to every 2 weeks. So I don't even know when this one will be released. As it stands, there's only season 1 out. Season 1 is available on YouTube and on all the podcast channels that we display on LinkedIn. So at the time of recording this, I have no idea how many views season 2 will have. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to come back and record at the end of season 2 being posted when it's up. But what I will say is that season 2 hopefully has given a lot more detail. What I realize is season 1 is very much my thoughts and how I perceive things to be. And there's been some amazing responses. I've had people reaching out to me, asking questions and stuff like that, which is really cool. But I think season 2 and season 3, after mapping season 3, is going to be where people are going to get the most value from. And I guess I've had to fight season 2 and season 3 is not written, but I've had to hold back, because what I'm mindful of is that, I do have a skill set. I don't necessarily have the opportunity on a podcast to share. Some of these topics we talk about, I'm covering in an hour, and if I'm running a workshop, it's about 4, just to put it in their perspective. So yeah, there's going to be stuff open to debate in season 2, season 3 as well. But that's what it's about. It's about starting a conversation. It's about, I'm open to learning stuff on the back of this podcast too. But hopefully you guys have learned something through season 2. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I think the quality of the podcasts are much better. Got much confident with it. Easier topics to sort of write about, I guess. Not so much easier in terms of what they are about than season 1. So look, all that's left, I'm going to give an overview of season 3. So season 3 will be 10 episodes, and they are titled as followed, currently in this order: recruitment, creating a role, restructure, redundancy. Yes, those are 2 different things. Performance management, HR training for HR, policies, comms, aka communication, employee engagement, and benefits. So hopefully you're excited about season 3. Hopefully you've listened to all of season 2 and got something out of it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. And catch you at season 3. Just to put it out there, season 3 probably won't start recording until, I'm going to say, the autumn time, just as a safety net. So hopefully we're out of lockdown, we're able to go places, and maybe I'm recording the first episode on a beach. Who knows? Take care.